Let's keep it moving. We mentioned the Fever stink. I'm sensing a trend that whenever we reference them on this program, they tend to start losing. It wasn't just a loss. It was their 16th in a row to the Las Vegas Aces, the only team that swept Caitlin Clark's Fever in her rookie season. It is now tied for the second longest winning streak for the Aces against one single WNBA team. The longest, Los Angeles, is 18 in a row against Minnesota from 99 to 2004. LA also won 16 straight against the Phoenix Mercury during that time too. Thank you, Michael Vopel of ESPN, for that stat. So, yeah, things are not great in Indianapolis right now. We can certainly dive in from that vantage point, Rebecca. But I did want to note one of our favorites here on this pod. We love Courtney Williams. We stand Courtney Williams, the ultimate Mia Rebecca pipeline, because she's from Folkestone, Georgia, down here in the Southeast. I covered Charlton County High School, where she went to high school, and now she plays for the Minnesota Lynx up there in the north, in the country, in the Midwest. And we love Courtney. And on Courtney's pod, she said that while some will look at the All-Star voting results so far and they will say, my God, all those crazy Caitlin Clark fans are just voting for Fever players, Courtney Williams noted, like, this is a movement and you have to respect it. You have to respect the elevated profile because of what Caitlin Clark has done in bringing more fans to the W, introducing them to players like Aaliyah Boston, like Lexi Hull. We're here on this podcast for Lexi Hull, Most Improved Player, 6th Woman of the Year. And so, I want to salute Courtney for that, but also I'm very worried about the Indiana Fever.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, hashtag stud buds, amazing. They're incredible. But the Fever, yeah, it's been a little rough patch, and it's
which reminds me, like, real quick, 2 weeks ago, Mitch and I were like, oh my God, it's awful. And then last week we were like, they're back. They're the greatest thing of all time. And now we're back to, my God, CC doesn't look like she's even interested.
Well, and I think that that's kind of part of the thing here, because the sentiment from fans that are on Reddit, which is probably not the best,
okay, we got some Reddit Randys in the chat here. We're good.
Temperature of what's going on out there, but it's, there's a sense of just this kind of like, well, we thought we were building this great team and getting this great coach, and you were hoping for that consistency, and then there's a lot of discussion about Caitlin shooting, and to your point, she drops this massive triple-double and breaks the Liberty's perfect record, and we're all just like, oh my goodness, and then comes into Golden State, who, I mean, was anyone expecting an expansion team to do what they're doing? And part of their team, like half their team's playing Eurobasket right now. So, like, of course not. But they come in and beat the Fever. And then you have, this almost dominant performance over the Aces, where they were leading the game, the majority of the game. And then just, and there is almost this disinterested kind of look. And I don't know, it's so much easier said than done when you're like, just keep into it, or you gotta get your mind right and stay into it,
girl. It's gonna fall for you. Like, yeah,
it's hard. But I will say, compared to last year, like, Caitlin's definitely she was still shooting, and her last 2 games she had a almost triple-double and then a double-double, and had double-digit scoring, which was considered a bad game for her. Yeah, the shooting wasn't great, and then you saw the difference between what happened with Asia and what happened with Caitlin in that game, where Asia was going 2 for 12 in the first half and then exploded, but Caitlin just could not seem to get that shot to fall, and still is, as we discussed, more than 3-point shooting, and still some of her passes I'm just like floored by, which is a big part of her game too. But yeah, she does contribute so much in terms of the energy to that team, and I think that's one thing in terms of the maturity with her, is making sure that she is conscious of how she is coming off. And that is probably a lot more easier said than done. I know that's something that Bluter talked about when she was at Iowa, like videotaping her and showing her what her expressions were like. There's also been discussion of, if you watch back some of the press, she does sound like she's maybe under the weather. Does that excuse anything? No, but it's you also have whatever's going on with Duana, who is part of that veteran leadership, and whatever's been going on with Stephanie. And there's been a lot of inconsistencies in that locker room. And so there could be a lot going on behind the scenes that's contributing to all of this. Obviously, like Stephanie said in the post game yesterday, she's like, I'm not worried about Caitlin's shot. And people go through shooting slumps, and she'll turn it around. It's not the end of the world. She still had 19 points.
She still was 7 of 20. Like, she took 20 shots.
Right. At least, and that's the thing. She's still shooting, which is important for her to keep going at it. But yeah, it's tough when that shot doesn't fall, obviously. And then how does that contribute to the downfall of the game? I don't know. But the Aces were also on a 3-game
losing streak.
Yeah. And Asia just got back in the game prior from the concussion protocol. So, I mean, she was due for something.
It was classic trap game.
Classic.
Just happened to come off of another loss to the Golden State Valkyries. And also, since we mentioned that Aces stat, Kate Martin now 6-0 in her WNBA career against Caitlin Clark, which is, for me, the stat that sticks out, and it's funny given the fact that I'm wearing, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm wearing an Oklahoma City Thunder shirt right now. Listen, I just hope everybody had fun last night, although obviously we didn't because Tyrese Halliburton got hurt. The reason I bring that up, the knock on Tyrese Halliburton is the stinkers, inevitably, 1 or 2 games in which he doesn't eclipse 10 points in a playoff series. But at the same time, in many of those games, he was approaching a double-double in the rebounding and assists department. And that, for me, is where I say you're contributing to the game in other facets, especially at the point guard position or the shooting guard, whichever you want to classify Tyrese as. And I'm okay with that. And so to that same point, Mitch and I have made this point a lot in the last few weeks. When Caitlin missed 5 games, Aaliyah Boston was taking anywhere between 5 to 10 less shots per game than what she was averaging when Caitlin was on the floor. And now you look at a stat line from Aaliyah where she's 12 of 19 for 26 points, and everyone wants to say that she's the only one who showed up and contributed to the group project. I say she doesn't have that many shot opportunities if CC isn't threading the needle to her. And so as long as Caitlin is still producing on that end of the floor, we once again return to where we were 1 year ago, which is this conversation of, is the coach trying to coach the shooter out of her because they're so focused on making her a point guard? I don't think it's as abrasive as perhaps Christy Sides was a year ago, where it was very much, she needs to be a pass first point guard. It was almost like Kim Mulkey to HVL back in the day. And I don't think that's the case with Steph. I would also say, and Caitlin noted this in some post games over the last week or so, that she feels like she's doing better after losses. Like last year when they would lose, she would be devastated and be emotionally distraught. I saw it in the game I went to against the Dallas Wings. She set the single game assist record in the W, and she like ran off the court just like throwing her towel, like upset, and like not in a demeaning, but just like a clearly frustrated way. And the fact that she's like, well, I'm managing that better, but there's now this critique of, but she looks disinterested. I think it's just her compensating to not make it look like she's losing her mind with whatever's going on.
I agree. And I think that there's a lot of criticism around her body language, and there's certainly still some pieces of it. There was, I think, one clip from a game or two ago where like Natasha Howard, she was on that hot streak in the Liberty game, I think, shooting those threes, and Natasha Howard got the ball in the post and was battling against a defender and just went for it. Caitlin kind of threw her arms up and was like, I think mostly it's like she's rarely so open that she's just like, hey. But I do think that there is a lot more to it than, I don't think she's disinterested because we know the kind of player that she is. And I think there's just so much hyper focus on her. And maybe if you pay attention to other players, it may not always be that way. But I will say on one last note that Kelsey Plum was on Lisa Leslie's podcast and was saying how she realized, especially getting into the league, that she had to bring this intensity the entire time she was in order to, win the possession and to win these games. You have to just fully be in it. And I'm sure sometimes when your shot's not falling and things are not going your way, that it can be hard to continue to do that the entire time, especially when we thought, maybe Caitlin was going to have to play the entire game. But she's getting some rest, but then you usually see the score start to change when that happens. So yeah, I digress.
Your weekly Caitlin Clark update, weekly Indiana Fever update. It's a roller coaster ride, folks. Buckle up. Rebecca, how about you round out this week's starting 5 with a little bit more of a discussion with regards to the All-Star voting?
Yeah, and so you mentioned it a little bit with Courtney Williams. And so I will say, stud buds, I will say that there's been this discussion because the Fever, really took over in the fan voting. We know that Sophie Cunningham's like jersey sold out after the whole, altercation and such. And there's been all that going on. however you feel about that. But when we look at the numbers, and you go back to 2023, Asia got around 36,000 votes, 36 with 3 zeros. Last year, Asia had 217,000. Caitlin had 216,000. This year, 500,000 votes for Caitlin.
Just Caitlin, not the rest, not the rest of it, just Caitlin.
484,000 for Fee, for Nafisa Collier, very much so deserved, as we know. 446,000 for Aaliyah Boston. I mean, huge, massive numbers. And I mean, I think for Fee, like Fee's numbers being up there, that's a clear, it's not just like it's Caitlin, Aaliyah, Lexi. It's not just going down the line of the fever. It's clearly this has brought attention to the players, and Asia's number 4 on that list. But you do have this weird thing going on where there's Sophie Cunningham and Lexi over people like Jonquil Jones and Alicia Gray and Nneka Ogwumike and Alyssa Thomas and Jackie Young and Ryan Howard and Brittany Sykes, who is in the Mystics
amazing, yeah,
incredible. But the thing too that's weird about that part is that in terms of the All-Star game and the players that get involved here, the fan vote counts for 50%. And so, in 2023, okay. In 2025, does that still work?
It's a great question. It's a great question.
Maybe not.
It's something that I think every sports league is reckoning with, and it's why the Pro Bowl, I don't want to quote it because I don't know the exact number, but I think it's similar. It's like 25 or 40. Like, it's not the entire basis of the selection for an All-Star game. But yeah, no, and I think that there's going to have to be some coaches selections like what they have in Major League Baseball, because like unfortunately, like Lexi Hull and Sophie Cunningham are going to, by virtue of they are on national television because they play for the Indiana Fever more than most other players. Although, hey, shout out League Pass, shout out NBA TV. They're trying in these streets. They're trying to get more teams and more games on air across the country. Like, like people are more familiar with them. They don't realize what Brittany Sykes has been at the forefront of this Mystics revolution, because everyone hears about Sonia Citron because she played at Notre Dame, and everyone forgets that Brittany Sykes was hurt for 2 years and now has refound her game. And it's unfortunate, but I think that's where you would have to restructure it. You're going to have additional selections to begin with. You're at large, but B, maybe you need to drop the number a little bit. But I'm really glad that we're wrapping this week's starting 5 with that, Rebecca. That's a great call. From 36,000 to 500,000, and the voting's not even done yet. That's awesome.
It's not. Yeah. And so I will say that there is the 25% of the vote goes to the media, 25% to the coaches, and then there's coaches that pick reserve players. So, hopefully you can get a little bit more of that evening out. And I think maybe the numbers motivated some other people to vote. I vote every day, but I'm not always voting Caitlin in, by the way. I'm just saying. But like,
you don't have to. Everyone else is. So
exactly. I'm like, it's fine. But I put Brittany Sykes in there. Alicia Gray, silently
could be in the MVP conversation. We talked about it last week.
Yeah, certainly could. But like maybe the other fans that aren't voting as much, maybe it's a little motivation to be like, okay, maybe we need to start putting some in. And some of the other teams like the Storm and the Mercury that maybe people aren't watching as much. I don't get to watch them a lot because they're on past my bedtime. But people like Satu, and one of our old Fever friends, Erica Wheeler.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who stepped in Kelsey stepped in for Erica? Somebody stepped in for
last year. Yes. Kelsey Kelsey stepped in for Erica. Yeah, I forget exactly what that was, but one of them got stuck because of a Delta mishap.
Yeah. So I think for the skills challenge or something like that. And so, Erica's been an all-star and all that jazz, and I might bring her up later, but just like some of these players that people might not even see as often because they're on so late, that aren't getting into that conversation because, yes, like you said, you have all these other teams that are on the national stage a bit more.